Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're welcoming back Gabe Barrett, founder of both Board Game Design Lab and Best with One Games. Best with One has recently launched the second edition of their solo game Hunted Kobayashi Tower, which is currently on GameFound. Gabe, welcome back to the binge. How you doing, sir?
James, I'm doing good, man. Thanks again for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you back and to see you, man. Oh, you're just, I see your content literally everywhere, as most people do. So it's always awesome to be able to have these interfaces with you. For those who want to check out our last episode, I think it was 197 was when you're last on the podcast. Gosh, it seems like it's just yesterday, and I was checking the time on this, and this is like over almost a year and a half ago. I was like, what? This seems like I just had the guy on the podcast, but it's amazing. Welcome back. We're going to get into some cool things you're working on. Now, just before we went on air, the one thing I was saying to you is last time you were on the podcast, you had just moved away from doing your own podcast, which was very successful and been running for a number of years. And now you've come back. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, one quick question for you, James. What number of podcasts are you up to at this point?
We are at, I think this is episode 276, I think.
Okay.
Ish.
Very cool, man. So,
277.
Think about podcasting. 277, which is crazy. And I'm sure when you first sat down to do this podcast, you were thinking, I'm going to get at least 277 episodes, right?
Yeah.
No, when you get started, you're like, I'm just going to do this thing and we'll see how it goes. But what's crazy about podcasting, the majority of shows in general don't make it past 3 episodes.
Yeah.
And then the majority of the ones that do never make it past 20. And so you and I have found ourselves in the top 1% by getting past episode 20 and now, up into, you're getting close to 300. I'm over 300 at this point. And it's kind of wild. And the longer you do it, I didn't get burned out. Like, I was in a place of, I just wanted to try something else. And so I shifted over to YouTube. I want to do some things kind of on a more personal side, not necessarily game related or design related. At the time, also, I was moving to a different country. I was moving away from Honduras, where I'd been for 8 years, back to the United States. And so everything was in flux. Everything was chaos, trying to figure out how to reorganize my life. And so it was just a really good time to pause, try something else, and always knowing I could come back. It's not like I burned the bridge. It's not like I was burned out or anything. I didn't want to do it anymore. And then as I did, as I moved back and got into kind of redoing and figuring out and getting back into creativity and content creation, it's like, okay, let's run it back. I was at episode 301 at the time, and it's like, hey, let's just see if we can kind of start this thing back up and maybe put more focus, more emphasis into it, because instead of teaching like I was in Honduras and kind of splitting my time among so many things, once I was in the States, I had a little more focus that I was able to put towards things, and so that's where it's been. And and actually now I'm shifting again, where I'm trying to focus on game design stuff in a different angle, and the podcast is now going to be maybe only 1 or 2 new episodes a month. But then I'm also rewinding. I'm kind of going back the greatest hits and pulling back old episodes that are like, oh, okay, this was an excellent episode. This was a phenomenal guest. This is one of the best game designers of all time. But it's episode, 79 or 123, and it's kind of lost in the library. It's like, okay, let's run it back. Let's repost it. Maybe put some content at the beginning of it or the end, and let people hear it for the first time. Because there's still so many people that are coming in new to the Board Game Design Lab, and they are not aware of these amazing older episodes, and so kind of giving those new life while allowing me to have the time to do some other things, right? So I'm really excited about 2024 and what everything is shaping up to be.
So how many episodes are you up to now? What's your count?
330 something. Wow. I think.
Yeah.
Getting close to 350.
Yeah, I never imagined. I thought 100 would be a good number, and
Yeah,
and then when you cross it, you're like, maybe 200 would be a good number,
right.
and then it's just like this will end when I just finally drop and can't do it anymore,
Well,
right?
once you build those systems, right, and you're in that rhythm,
Yeah,
and you're just so used to the scheduling and the sitting down, and like you kind of made it a habit,
yeah,
you really could do it for almost forever, assuming you're taking care of yourself and you're sleeping right, like you're doing all those
yeah.
things right. But luckily for us, we're not getting millions of views on these things. The stress level is a lot lower than some people that create content. There's so many people right now on YouTube that are like walking away and they're, whatever. It's like I don't exactly know what that feels like to get that much stress. It's like it's just not that big a deal when you're not getting
That was
insane numbers and your entire paycheck isn't devoted to content and you've got 10 people on staff that you have to make sure they're paid, and
yeah.
we don't deal with that. So.
That's the key, right? Is it being kind of a side hustle, which is just it's a hobby. It's something I do for fun, right? That like it's not monetized. It's literally just creating content for content's sake. And I think the epiphany for me was because when you first start out, you're trying to get that model just right, and it's like, spend so much time editing and so forth. And then just one day I just realized nothing matters and no one cares. They really don't. You know what I mean? So if there's the ums and like I leave everything in. Like we clip the beginning that we're off air when we're just getting ready to go live, and I clip the very end when we say our goodbyes, and everything else, unless someone's coughing incessantly into the mic, everything else is as it is. And for me, that allowed me to really shorthand the process, right? So get the content out faster, and a lot of that kind of post editing that was kind of the drag on it, being able to kind of eliminate a lot of that really freed up to say, okay, I can just keep doing this because now it's relaxing. It's something I enjoy doing. It's not too much stress, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you can do to prevent friction, right? To
Yeah.
grease the tracks, right? Make it easier to get it out there, and so you don't dread it. So you're not like frustrated by it. That allows you to last long term. And so I think whether we're talking about creativity in general, making art, designing games, podcasts, anything, that's the case. And that's been my advice to a lot of new creatives or even old creatives, right? Is how can you eliminate as much friction as possible so that you can focus on the thing you actually enjoy, the part you really love,
Yeah.
and get through all the other stuff without it just sucking the life out of you.
For those who don't know you, and most people know who you are, but for those who don't, can you talk a little bit about Board Game Design Lab before we get into Best with One? Just because, again, this community you've built, I think, is just so awesome. And there's so many people that I know that are in game design that go there for a resource. And, it's helped a lot of people. So we'd be remiss to not talk a little bit about that if it's okay. Can you talk to our audience a little bit about your community and what that's all about and how they get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So Board Game Design Lab was started in 2016, began first as a podcast where, again, I was in Honduras. I was trying to figure out how can I connect with the industry, and I started the show to interview game designers and just ask them questions that basically I had, right? If I'm working on a deck building game, let me go find a great deck building game designer and chat with him for an hour or her for an hour and see what their best advice is. And I never thought anybody would listen or care. I just wanted to do this and see what, happened. And then it just kind of kept growing. And eventually I started a Facebook group that really just turned into a community. And now it's got over 17,000 people, which still boggles my mind.
Massive.
It's the biggest community on the internet, which is nuts. And a lot of them don't even know who I am necessarily. Like they're not finding the podcast. They're not finding me. They're finding the show, or excuse me, finding the community through other means. And so I can't tell you how many times someone will mention me and then someone else will be like, who is that? So that's kind of where it is now, and I saw this the other day. It's like, there's the difference between an audience and a community.
Yeah.
An audience is a group of people that a person, or, in my case, me or you, are talking to.
Yeah.
A community is when they talk to each other. Right. And so I kind of accidentally built up this community that now they talk to each other and they don't need me.
Yeah.
Right. Which is kind of freeing. I don't, again, like we were talking about a moment ago, I don't feel this pressure to constantly be going in and making new posts and like I'm having to grind it out and making sure everybody is engaged. They do it just naturally, right?
Yeah.
Organically. They're chatting with each other. So, sometimes for worse, right? Sometimes you gotta be like, hey, that's what? No, don't say that.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of online communities, but it's crazy. And so anyone that is a game designer or wants to be a game designer or an artist, an illustrator, or a graphic designer, wants to get into publishing, anything game industry related, it's the best group on the internet.
Yeah.
It's encouraging. It's just got a good overall vibe to it. We're very just upfront about, hey, we're here to help each other. And make sure that we're all making the best games that we can possibly make, and being there for each other, right? We live in such isolating times.
Yeah.
And to have a community online where you can come to that all shares the same passion, even if we don't share the same, region or demographics or political views or religious views, like none of that matters. We're all here to make great games that people love. And it's just a really cool community to be a part of. So yeah, I encourage anyone that wants to join. Come on.
Yeah, I would encourage people to join it as well. Board Game Design Lab. Just look on Facebook, you'll find it. I'm always seeing in my feed a pop up. This person asking a question, and you'll see a whole bunch of people jump in and provide advice. And as you said, you got to weed through it, right? It's not all going to be diamonds. It's not all going to be glowing, right? But the cool thing is you have so much talent that's part of that community. It really is a go-to place where if you have like a serious question and you're looking for some serious answers and really trying to get some help with some things, it's not there to promote stuff. It's there really to ask questions and help with your game design. So for me, I think it's awesome you've created that community, and I can't wait to see how this thing continues to grow, right? And I think you're right. I haven't seen as many posts from you, but I'm seeing a lot of posts from other people, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and even if I did post more often, you probably wouldn't see it because so many other people post all the time.
Yeah.
I'm a part of some groups, and it might be one post every 3 or 4 days, like a new post. And those groups are kind of big. They've got several thousand members.
Yeah.
But something about the Board Game Design Lab, I mean, it's constantly being just filled up with amazing posts, people asking questions, people sharing success stories or failures, people asking for feedback about their graphic design or their crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah.
Like, it's just constant. And it's great. It's just an amazing place.
How do you moderate it when you have that many people as part of that community? Do you have a bunch of people that you've kind of added as mods to help you with that?
Yeah,
or?
There's a few of us. I've added more and more as the community has grown. You just kind of have to. And sometimes people criticize me, but I'm more of a light touch. I am of the belief that grown people can act like grown people. And if someone is saying something to you that's maybe it's that weird tension, right? If someone like crosses a line, yes, that stuff gets moderated out. Those people can get banned. Some direct messages. I've had so many conversations, even with like well-established designers who are trolls on the internet, and people that I've been like, gosh, I want to ban you, but you're a really good designer and you bring certain things to the community, but you're also a troglodyte online. But anyway, so like there's always that fun tension of community building. But a lot of times it's just an encouraging word, right? If someone says something and maybe it comes across unkind, unhelpful, mean-spirited, just reaching out to them and be like, hey, what's going on? Because what I find is it's not that person is an awful person. A lot of times they're having a bad day. They're going through something, or they said it in a way they didn't mean anything by it. It was just the way they typed it. And because our silly lizard brains, like when we see something written out, we can take it different ways. We don't hear the tone. We don't hear the emphasis, and so a lot of times we take it as the worst possible way someone could have said it. And so also I've reached out to people and they say, sorry, English is my third language. So it's like, oh yeah. And as a person who speaks a second language, I only know how to say things not 2 ways, only one way. If I want to say anything in Spanish, I only know how to say it one way. And if that happens to not be like the most polite way in that context, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot more empathy for people, especially because there's such a large number of people that aren't from the US or Canada, aren't North American, or from the UK, that English is not their first language by any stretch. And so that could have been it, right? So one thing I find is just reaching out to people, right? Talking to them directly and seeing, hey, what's going on? And then just reminding them who we are, right?
Yeah.
It's, if you have a comment like that, please just keep it to yourself. But again, in general, we're adults, right? And so if someone says this is bad for this reason and that reason, as long as it's constructive and helpful in some way, even if it is a little bit harsh, that's okay, right? It's okay. Sometimes people just need to chew the old phrase, chew the meat and spit out the bones, right? Find the nuggets of wisdom in there, wipe away the garbage, and be like, no, the heart of this is really helpful. But unfortunately, online we kind of we get a little been out of shape. We get offended by stuff
in person too, right? Like I've been to pro spiels and in prototyping events where you'll have somebody that'll say something so bluntly that it can take you back, right? And
Hmm.
I think that's part of the skill set you have to develop as a game designer is developing a bit of a thick skin, enough to
Yeah.
kind of just shield you a bit from the initial shock, right, of blunt words. But then the next step, which is be able, as you're saying, what's in there. There's a nugget of something in there, and if I can just allow myself to kind of just chew on it a bit, I'm sure there's going to be something in there that I can walk away with that's going to be very helpful. But um, if for people that don't like feedback, I mean, this is a tough industry to be in if you don't like feedback,
Right.
because everybody wants to give you feedback because everyone's so excited about getting creating great games, right?
Yeah.
And I always say to colleagues of mine is that the biggest thing you have to try to sort out is, are they giving you feedback on what can make your game better, or is it feedback that they're giving you to turn to a game that they want to play? Because
Yeah.
those are two different things, right?
Right.
And you got to make sure that you know if you're trying to create a certain thing, you need the feedback that's going to help you to make that thing better, not necessarily turn into something it was never intended to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also depends on context. I come
Yeah.
from a football background where coaches were not shy about making up new cuss words that had never been spoken by the human mouth, and they would come up with these phrases. You'd be like, "Dang, that hurts my feelings." But you can't be like, "Dang, that hurts my feelings." You got to be like, "Yes, coach, you got to get back out there and you got to do
Yep.
the job, right? You got to get back up." And so, someone like me, I'm going to hear criticism differently
Yeah.
than someone who grew up in a different culture, different context, right? And so that's another thing online. You're running into all these different people in different contexts and different experiences, different locations and different family upbringings and stuff like that. And now we're all trying to work together on these things. And it's hard, right? That's a challenging thing. But to your point, one of the best things you can do as a creative in general, so if you're going to put stuff out online, if you're going to put stuff out for other people to engage with and interact with, is you got to build that thicker skin. Now, don't let it make you cynical and jaded, right? But at least to deflect the emotional parts.
Yeah.
That way you can see the real gold in there to go, oh, okay, I don't like the way you said that, but that is a good point right here, right? You didn't have to say it that way, but I see what you're saying, right? And to detach the emotion from it and only take in the helpful parts, and life gets a lot easier.
Oh, absolutely. With Best with One, this whole journey of kind of creating games that are dedicated just to be like a solo play. Where did this start? Like, where did you kind of come up with this initiative?
Yeah, so the first game I created was in 2019 and hunted Mining Colony 415, which is this kind of fast playing, push your luck, card driven alien type experience,
Yep.
right? And it was just an idea I had kind of randomly, but it worked out because in Honduras for a long time I had a really good friend that we were game buddies, right? We played games together. I would design games. He had a really good mind and eye for development. He wasn't as good at designing, but he could really take a already designed game and like make it better. And so he and I worked together on a lot of stuff. But then he moved back to the United States, and so I found myself without anybody to really play games with, and my wife was pregnant, and a lot of stuff going on there, and so I just started designing games for me, just for one player, and I was like, well, this is my context now, so I'll just start doing that, and I created one, and I thought, man, this is actually pretty good, and so I showed it to a publisher, and they loved it, and they're like, I want to sign this game, and I immediately thought, if it's good enough for you, I'm going to do it myself. Like that gave me that confidence to go, okay, if someone else wants to offer me a contract to put this out into the world,
Yeah.
why can't I put this out into the world? Right. And that's just kind of how I am. I want the ball in my hands, right? To keep using football metaphors. Like I want to be the one that determines do I win or lose?
Yeah.
And so I started working on, finding an illustrator and graphic design and all that kind of stuff. And then put it out on Kickstarter originally. And I actually did the first two games in that series, in the Hunted series. And it did way better than I anticipated. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So this is something. And then 2020 happened and solo gaming got a lot more popular
Oh yeah.
because everybody was stuck at home. And so that has kind of helped my business, for all the tragic and awful that was, a lot of businesses that were able to benefit. And if you're a solo gamer or game designer or publisher, it's just kind of part of it. It created a much larger customer base to be able to provide games for. And so, now it's turned into basically I just kicked off this January the solo game of the month club, and I'm doing a solo game every single month. Now, they're not all from me. I've got a lot of games I've signed from other designers. Some of the games are going to be reprints. Some of the games are going to be translations. I've got a really cool game I'm excited about for next month that's only been ever available in Korean, and so we've got it translated into English. It's excellent worker placement solo game, and all sorts of games coming out over the next year. And before we hit record, we were talking about Jason Tagmeyer over at Button Shy.
Yeah.
That's kind of the model. He laid the blueprint, and he and I have had so many conversations over the last 6 months of me trying to figure this out. And he came on my podcast, and it was an excellent interview. And that kind of has helped shape this whole thing to be able to realize, okay, I can make it happen. And then also, it's again, like we were talking about, it's finding the systems, right, to make it easier.
Yeah.
So one thing I found is that if you see the video, you can see this case. This looks like a VHS case, right? Old school VHS tape case. That's because it is. These are VHS cases. I found a company in China that manufactures these plastic cases, and you can get them without the little plastic hubs on the inside, right? So you've actually got just a normal box. Well, every game in the series comes in this. That means I don't have to spend extra time and money and all that stuff figuring out, well, what's the box size going to be? And we got to, make sure that everything fit. Like, no. This is it. This is what we use for all of them. They look really good on the shelf. You can see a bunch of prototypes behind me right over there on the shelf. They look good sitting there next to each other. And so every game comes in this box. Every game will be printed immediately after the Game Found campaign is over. We're not doing stretch goals. We're not doing add-ons. It's like, this is the game. It's already deluxeified. It's already as good as it can be. The rule book's done. Everything's done. I just need to know how many to print. As soon as Game Found ends, it goes right into manufacturing. As soon as that's done, it ships directly from China. We're not waiting on a boat, to load up containers. We're not waiting on fulfillment centers that might have, who knows how big of a queue line. No, direct to backers. And so the goal with this is to get games on people's tables in 4 months or less.
Wow.
Preferably less. 4 months is like, okay, that's pushing it. I don't want it to go that long. And so again, it's creating new models and new systems to hopefully make this happen. And still learning, still figuring it out, right? Still having lots of conversations with people as far as logistics and getting things figured out. But I'm really excited about the potential that this could have. And so, just a new way of doing things.
So it'll ship straight from China, which is different than Jason's model, because Jason's model, insanely, they're still hand assembling these things in the States, which is just crazy. We had a good laugh afterwards on it, but I mean, good for him. I mean, to be able to pull it off is crazy. So yours is going to go straight from factory. And this kind of game of the month, is it going to be like a subscription model, or what's the plan there? How's that going to work?
No subscription. Basically, every month there's a new Game Found campaign. If you want the game,
Game Found, okay.
Buy the game. Yep. If you want it, buy it. If you don't, if this game in the series is not for you, no worries. Maybe get the next one. And, it's not like a loot box or anything like that, subscription. I've looked at that model. I talked to Jason about that model and ultimately decided it was just easier, again, trying to make the systems easier to just say, here's the game. And then just find out how many people want it, print that many, and then move on to the next one. The downside being there's no retail release. You're not going to find these games in stores on my website. Like, I'm only printing enough to cover the backers and then some extra copies to cover like replacement, if anything gets lost or anything, and the international shipping and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's all limited edition, which is kind of nice because people dig that, especially gamers. But the downside is, 6 months from now, if there are people that like want the game, I don't know, you would have had to buy it 6 months ago, right? So there's pros and cons.
Wow. And then in terms of like just the time involved, I mean, being a publisher myself, it takes so much time to put together a title, and you're going to do 12. How do you manage the time investment for this? Like, this is a lot of time invested, right? Like, do you have a team around you at all? Is it you just kind of going 24/7, or how are you managing that?
So the main thing I knew I needed was a graphic designer that was like constant. And so my buddy Drew, who's done graphic design for almost every project I've done, he's on board. Like, he's actually part of the company. And he's not just a freelancer, like as this thing rises or falls, so do I. And so is he, which is kind of nice. Everybody's invested there. There's stakes. And so, he's making sure the Game Found campaign pages are good to go. The rule books, the covers, like all that kind of stuff is just part of what he brings to the table. And then I need, what I'm still looking for is like a customer service project manager, that kind of person as well, to just kind of help. I think as things grow, that I'm going to really need that person more. But also, when I started this thing was 6 months ago. And so the first 4 games in the series are done. Like, like I could go to print with any of them basically tomorrow and be good to go. And
Yeah.
so I've got through April to then make sure May is good and then June is good and July is good. And I've already got a bunch of games signed or designed by myself. And so then for those games, it's just a matter of making sure they're polished, the graphic design's done, illustrations are done, so it's just, again, it's that pipeline, right? And figuring out the system that you need to have in place to make sure a game is ready to go the first Tuesday of every month. And I've got a 4 or 5 month head start, so that helps.
With the games that you're signing of other people's games, obviously there's some you've said they're going to be reprints and so forth. Is there any that are new titles, like games that haven't hit the mark yet, like new designs, and
Yeah.
what's your process to find these various titles?
Yeah, several. A lot of them are brand new that no one's ever seen before on the market. The game coming up in March is brand new. It's from a designer named Joe Clipful, who's done several solo games in the past. Recently did the Gloomhaven solo game.
Oh,
That's
wow.
kind of him and her name is escaping me. But anyway, he worked with just a phenomenal designer there, the co-design. And anyway, so that's a brand new game coming up in May is going to be a new game. Like there's quite a few that are like brand new. But then also to kind of supplement things and just make it easier, right? I'm also reaching out to, designers that maybe put a game out on the Game Crafter, right? That's a really good game, but it's $70 when it needs to be 20.
Or less. Yeah.
Yeah, just the nature of print on demand. It's just really expensive, but it's a really good game, and maybe a lot of the art's done, and graphic design's done. Maybe it needs some polishing here and there. Maybe we need to develop 1 or 2 things, but overall the game is good to go. It's been play tested a bunch, and so the rule book is basically finished. Like reaching out to those kinds of designers as well and saying, hey, can we partner? I'm doing a limited edition thing every month. I would love to feature your game as one of those. Right? They still keep their rights. Like you keep selling it on GameCrafter, like whatever. Like let's figure out, or finding games that are 1 to 4 players that have a really good 1-player mode. It's like, well, let's just pull that 1-player mode out and offer it by itself. That way, a gamer is not, if you're a solo gamer, you don't want to pay $50. If you're only going to play it solo, pay 20, pay 25. So doing little things like that as well, just to kind of make it easier to bring products to market. Make it easier to get games on solo gamers' tables, right? And also create these really nice limited edition versions. I don't know. I'm just excited, man. I think it's a really cool model, and now it's just a matter of figuring out how to make it all work.
Why GameFound versus Kickstarter? What was the decision process there?
I'm just done with Kickstarter. I'm so annoyed by the people that work there. Their customer service. If I was going to create a customer service system that was intentionally awful, I don't think I could intentionally make a system worse than what Kickstarter has in place.
Yeah.
This is my personal experience. I cannot tell you how many frustrations and annoyances I've had trying to work with Kickstarter, like trying to work with them, trying to give them money after I've already, given them, I don't know, tens of thousands, maybe $100,000 at this point, like after all my campaigns. Like they've made a decent chunk of money off my work. But then, you email them because you've got some kind of issue with their system and you don't hear back for a week, 7 days, 8 days. When you do hear back, they basically tell you, why don't you just Google that? What? What? One time I sent them a question and they sent me to the front page of Kickstarter. Didn't even tell me where to go. They just like, here, just go to our website. Yeah, okay, well, what page on your website? They sent me a link to the homepage.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. It's my understanding, and fact check me on this, somebody, but they do a 4-day work week. Monday through Thursday.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay.
As far as I understand. And that's also been my experience recently with not hearing back.
Yeah.
And so that means if you have a problem at 5:01 p.m. Eastern time, you're not going to hear back until Monday. If you send them an email Thursday at 5:01 Eastern, good luck until Monday, probably Tuesday, because Mondays are hard. Go to wait till Tuesday. And so I've just been so frustrated with the customer service. A lot of the back end stuff has actually improved.
Yeah.
The creator stuff it's leaps and bounds. GameFound has finally forced them to get better and to stop having such a dumpster fire of a back end.
Competition's good.
Anyone who's
Yep.
It 100% is, and now they just need to level up their customer service.
Yeah.
There's a few people that might need to be fired because they don't do their jobs, and they're just not good at their jobs if they are doing them. And so I've just been really frustrated. Not that I won't ever use Kickstarter again. There are certain games that GameFound's not a good fit.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of the market, right? And so the dollars and cents of it, I will probably use Kickstarter again in the future. I ain't gonna be super happy about it, but it's just gonna be the best platform for that particular title, right? And so
Certainly, I think GameFound is probably more conducive to your model of having a game a month, though, right? Like
it is, it is,
just the flexibility and so forth, right?
and they're excited.
Yeah.
I've got a project manager or a contact there that we email back and forth pretty regularly. He sent me a message, I don't know, a couple days ago. He said, "Hey man, congrats on the campaign. It's doing really well. Really excited for you." He didn't have to send me that. He didn't have to send me anything.
Yeah.
He could have a million things he had going on in his day, but he took a moment out to send me a personal message to say, "Hey, congrats on funding." That goes a long way.
Oh yeah.
Right? And I know Kickstarter has so many projects. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not that hard that because you can set it up. I mean, this could be automated, right? You see an automated message that says, "Hey, this game just hit their funding goal." Ooh, copy, paste, email, change the name, send. That's all you got to do. And all of a sudden somebody feels really, really good. They feel like, man, I really like Kickstarter. It's going the extra mile. And it's not that hard. And it just frustrates me. I don't know if you can tell.
Oh, really? I couldn't tell. So for Hunted, for those who don't know about this game, can you talk about it really quickly? Give us kind of an overview of like how you would play this game, kind of what it's about. It's part of a series, so in that context as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hunted, the series, is the core mechanism, right? Every game in the series has the same core card play mechanism where it's this push your luck system where you've got a deck of cards, you're turning over cards, right? You're seeing what's coming out, and each card allows you to activate other cards, right? Each card gives you icons, basically act like currency, to activate other cards. So for instance, if you're trying to open a door or move down a hallway, then you're going to need to activate movement icons from another card.
Yeah.
To then,
that's cool.
Draw that door card, which moves you through locations, which helps you get to the end of the game. But there's also that really cool machine gun that you need some search icons, and the door's got a search icon. It's like, okay, do I spin the machine gun to get the door? Do I spin the door to get the machine gun? It's that kind of push-pull, like what makes the most sense to help me win this game, right? And so in Kobayashi Tower, it's based on a certain action movie set around possibly Christmas, and inspired. It is 100% inspired by action movies that I love. The whole series is inspired by basically things that I enjoy, right? That I want to see brought to life in different stories. And so in this one, you're working your way through a tower, trying to get to the roof to defeat the criminal mastermind to rescue your wife, right? And all along the way, there's terrorists you have to deal with, and you've got events and different things that are happening. But yeah, it's just a fun little game. It takes about 20-25 minutes to play. Lots of tension, lots of kind of push your luck. This one's a dice rolling game. The second edition added a ton of luck mitigation, so the game is just as challenging, but now it's a little less swingy, right? You don't feel like the dice determined the thing, and now there's a lot more control in the player's hands. They control the pace more. They control the luck, different, the ratios as far as like, okay, what are my odds of being successful? The player gets to control that a little bit more in the second edition. And yeah, I'm just really excited for it to get it on people's tables.
I thought the design was quite clever, like how like you do very well at emulating, like kind of trying to escape, trying to go through this building, right? So like the picking doors, and then am I going to go in that room or that room? Like choosing rooms you're going to go into, or even when you get caught by a bad guy, it's like, okay, do I want to use my one card that allows me to kind of get it quick, or do I want to go into combat, right? And then we go into like a roll off where I'm going to actually fight the bad guys. Like it was cool. Like I was going through your page, it's like, wow, this thing's actually really well designed. Was there ever any thought behind like licensing IPs on like across your entire series? So take different types of movie genres or whatever and tying them in at all, or?
Absolutely. I've sent several copies to the Op, which has licenses. I mean, they did a Die Hard board game. It wasn't very good, if I'm being honest, because you don't feel like it's Die Hard, right? They try to make it a multiplayer game.
Yeah,
I don't see how Die Hard can be a good multiplayer game unless it's one versus many. And so, but it really needs to be a solo experience. That is the inspiration, right? And so, yeah, I've tried to license it to them. Never heard back. The nature of licenses is very challenging. It takes forever to get any kind of feedback, to get any kind of yes or a no, right? And so, it's to a place where it's like, okay, I can be inspired, make sure I avoid copyright infringement, make sure I avoid any like trademark or anything legal issues, change it, transform it, make it different, make sure I'm not using any of the language, there's not going to be any crossover as far as this, a movie script and anything that I put in a card or something like that, avoiding all of the legal side of things. But still, when people play it, they get that experience, right? They get that feeling of that action hero, right? And so I would love to license some stuff. It's just hadn't happened yet. Maybe one day.
And then from here, kind of what's the next, like the next game that's going to be part of the series that you're coming out with? So that starts as soon as this one's done, the next one launches. And sorry, what is that game again going to be, the next one?
Yeah, so actually I haven't told anybody. So if they listen to your show,
got exclusive
scoop. Exactly. So every month, first Tuesday of the month, a new game will launch on GameFound. The next one is called Dyson Crusoe, and it's basically Robinson Crusoe as a dice placement game. And again, this is a game that was Korean, an amazing Korean designer. That I saw the game randomly on Board Game Geek, and a Board Game Geek user had like translated the rules, mostly figured it out, right, and then had put out some videos of playing the game. And I was like, that's a really good game. That's a really good game. Why is there no English version?
Yeah.
And so I reached out to the designer, and he's a designer and publisher. And I said, hey, this is what I'm doing. I've got this series of games coming out, solo games. Would you be interested? And we worked out a contract, and basically I've just got the English rights to be able to do, this limited edition version. And I'm excited. It's a good game, and I can't wait to bring it to more people on this side of the world to be able to experience it.
Do you have a like? There's obviously Board Game Design Lab where people go and learn about game design and so forth. Do you have a separate social channel set up or community for Best with One?
So at the moment, it's really just through the email list. You can go to bestwithone.com/month and you can sign up for that. I'm working on. I'm probably going to go to Discord. I got to figure out Discord, but talking to Jason Tagmeyer, talking to other people that are kind of doing this type of thing, Discord seems to be maybe a better alternative to Facebook. Still figuring that out. So hopefully I'll get that understood. I don't want to never invest in something you don't understand, as Dave Ramsey says. Make sure you understand what you're doing before you dive into it. But working on Discord, then maybe YouTube channel just to house everything. Because right now it's like, well, where do I put how to play videos? Because they don't belong on the Board Game Design Lab.
Yeah.
And they don't belong on like my personal channel, really. So like there'll probably be a Best with One YouTube channel starting up here in the near future, really just to have like overview videos and how to plays and announcements and stuff like that, just for almost news sake, not so much a community, just a place where people can go to find information and content. So anyway, working on that. And then also, if someone listening to this, if you are a game designer and you have an idea for a solo game that's thematic and engaging and fun, not so much abstract, not so much like a roll and write, not an 18 card game, like a small box, fun, win or lose solo game, then go to bestwithone.com/contact, and there's a Google form, and you can submit your game. There's also a giant wish list of games that I would love to publish. A lot of those games are games that I want to make, but I don't have time. And so if somebody else can make them, then I'd love to put them out there into the world, and I can kind of help in that process of bringing those ideas to life. But I'm just excited to give more people an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
When you're publishing 12 games a year,
it's a lot.
You can do a lot more, right? You can be flexible. You can take a chance on a game, right? If you're only doing 2 games a year, they both got to hit, right? And so you kind of have to be a little risk averse, right? Because like, what if we go out there and it flops? It's like that's half of our games, right? But I can be a little more flexible, a little more risky, and risky is not even the right word. I can take more chances with themes, with ideas, mechanisms, experiences. And so, especially if someone has something that like maybe a bigger publishing company would be like, I don't know, maybe what's the market for this? I can say yes. Be like, hey, let's go out there, because I think we can get 800 backers. 800 backers for another company would bankrupt them. 800 backers for this, hey, that works out fine, right? And so I'm just excited about what's ahead, man.
I'm going to put a link in the show notes for those who do want to go and check out your website. I think there's a ton of game designers that listen to our podcast, so please check it out. And if you've got a design you think could fit, you never know. It doesn't hurt to submit it. You never know. Yours could be the next one that comes out in this coming year. Gabe, I want to wish you all the best. Congrats again on this campaign. I know we didn't really say it, but you funded on this campaign, so congrats on that. I think that's amazing, and I'm going to be keeping an eye out for this game of the month coming. I can tell the excitement that's just pouring out of you. It gets me excited, so I want to wish you all the best this coming year, and we'll talk soon, my friend.
Awesome. James, thanks again for having me.
No worries. Cheers. This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.